The vibration of the station's attitude thrusters was a hum Lyra Ashford felt in her teeth, a sensation she usually associated with stress fractures or micro fissures in a load-bearing bulkhead. But tonight, standing on the private observation deck of the Spire's grand ballroom, it felt like a heartbeat, a massive mechanical pulse thrumming through the titanium bones of the structure she had spent a decade birthing from the void. She stood at the highest point of Station 5. A sheet of hyperglass, 3 inches thick and diamond hard, separated her from the absolute zero of the frontier belt. Outside, the universe was a tapestry of cold velvet and burning stellar dust. Inside, the air smelled of recycled jasmine and expensive champagne, a stark contrast to the sterile scent of ionized air that usually clung to her. The starlight washed over her white composite engineering suit. It was a Mark V builder-class exoskeleton designed for high-risk extravehicular construction. It wasn't sleek like military armor. It was bulky, utilitarian, and covered in scratches from asteroid impacts and the scars of plasma spatter from 10,000 welds. The cyan energy inlays along her arms pulsed with a slow rhythmic beat that matched her resting heart rate. She wasn't wearing formal wear. She refused to. This suit was the only thing that kept her alive when she welded the keel of this place, and she wore it like a second skin. On her forearms, the heavy gauntlets housed her life's work. Integrated industrial tools, a plasma cutter on the left, a micro welder on the right. Tools of creation, dormant now but humming with the potential to reshape steel. Lyra's auburn hair was pulled back in a tight braid, threaded with copper wire she'd never bothered to remove after a 14-hour EVA shift last week. Her green eyes, sharp and calculating, swept across the ballroom below. Ambassadors and corporate executives moved in careful orbits, their laughter hollow, their politics barely concealed beneath champagne smiles. She hated these events, hated the performance. But she'd built this station complex, and tradition demanded the architect appear at the christening. "You're calculating load tolerances again, aren't you?" The voice was a low vibration that resonated in her sternum. It carried an accent she couldn't place, musical and layered, like wind chimes submerged in deep water. Lyra didn't turn. She didn't have to. She felt the shift in air pressure as K.L. Winter stepped close behind her. His presence was a magnetic pull that made the fine hair on her arms stand up beneath the suit's underlayer. She felt his hands, cool and strong, slide over the armored plating of her shoulders. His long fingers found the unarmored ridge of her neck where the seal met skin. The contact sent a familiar electric jolt through her nervous system. "Not load tolerance," Lyra said, her voice rougher than she intended. She leaned back into his touch, allowing the tension in her trapezius muscles to uncoil. "Just wondering if the structural integrity of the dance floor will hold under the weight of all that ego. The ambassadors are heavier than they look." Kale laughed, a sound like water over river stones. He moved around her, blocking her view of the stars. He was breathtaking, a vision that made her chest ache every time she looked at him, even after 3 years. His species, the Aquarian, were native to deep ocean worlds and systems she'd never visit. His skin was azure blue, drinking in the starlight, and glowing with a faint bioluminescent pulse beneath the surface. The white ceremonial armor he wore was more art than protection. Gold filigree traced the curve of his shoulders and the line of his spine, leaving his arms exposed to show the taut alien musculature there, the play of light beneath his skin. His hair floated around his face, magenta strands suspended by the faint static charge he naturally generated. His eyes were amber, pupils horizontal and rectangular like a predator's, and they locked onto hers with an intensity that stopped her breath. "Forget the floor," Kale whispered, reaching up to trace the jagged line of the burn scar on her jaw. A souvenir from a plasma conduit rupture 3 years ago, the day they met. "Focus on me." Lyra caught his wrist, her grip firm through the gauntlet. Her thumb brushed the sensitive pulse point on the inside of his arm. The contact sent heat cascading through her, a raw electric need she constantly kept leashed beneath layers of discipline and armor. She pulled him closer. The hard ceramic of her chest plate clicked softly against his gold finery. "I never focus on anything else," she said. He smiled, a curve of violet lips that was possessive and dangerous. "Good, because I did not bring you to the Spire to discuss load-bearing ratios. I brought you here to remind you that you are not just a machine that builds, you are a woman. Lyra leaned down slightly. At 5'10" in the suit's boots, she had 2 inches on him. She captured his mouth in a kiss that was less greeting and more claim. He tasted of exotic nectar and cool rain, something she could never quite identify but always craved. His arms wound around her neck. His body pressed against hers, the hard lines of her suit digging into his softer skin, a contrast they both needed. The builder and the diplomat, the stone and the water. She groaned low in her throat, her hands sliding down to grip his waist. She lifted him slightly so they were eye level. The station, the politics, the looming trade negotiations, the galaxy. None of it existed. There was only the heat of him, the smell of his skin like spiced orchid and clean metal, and the desperate clawing need to take him right there against the railing. 3 years. 3 years since he'd walked into her life during the worst day she'd ever lived. 3 years since the reactor meltdown that nearly took Station 2 offline. The explosion that scarred her face and should have killed them both. She'd pulled him out of the fire. He'd stayed. The explosion shattered the moment. It wasn't a noise. It was a concussion of pressure that blew the balcony doors inward in a shower of twisting metal and safety glass. The hyperglass cracked like thunder, spiderwebbing from the center. Lyra reacted before the glass hit the floor. Her combat algorithms, no, her survival algorithms kicked in. She spun, shoving KL behind her, her suit's kinetic dampeners flaring bright cyan as they absorbed the shockwave. The servos in her legs locked, holding her position as the blast tried to throw them both over the railing. Smoke poured into the ballroom, thick, acrid, smelling of sulfur and burning polymer. Through the haze, the screams of the dignitaries were cut short by the sharp hiss-crack of energy weapons discharging. Plasma bolts lit up the smoke like lightning in a storm cloud. She saw them emerge, armored figures in jagged black exoskeletons that looked like chitinous insects. They moved with military precision, their boots clamping magnetically to the floor. 8 of them. No, 12. They spread out in a tactical formation that spoke of professional training. Purity, KL hissed behind her, his voice dropping an octave, losing all its warmth. Varric's zealots. Stay behind me, Lyra ordered. Her voice was flat, devoid of the passion from seconds ago. She was no longer the lover. She was the builder who knew every bolt of this room, and she knew it was about to become a slaughterhouse. 3 soldiers rushed the balcony, plasma rifles raised. Lyra didn't retreat. She didn't have a gun, but she was wearing a suit designed to wrestle starship engines into place, to bend steel beams with her bare hands. She stepped forward, closing the distance before they could fire. She grabbed the barrel of the first rifle with her left gauntlet. The metal was hot, still cycling from the last discharge. She didn't care. With a twist of her hips, in a surge of servo-assisted strength, she snapped the composite weapon in half. The crack was satisfying. The soldier's shock was brief. Before he could process the loss, Lyra drove the stock of the broken rifle into the alien's helmet. The visor cracked with a wet crunch. The soldier went limp, collapsing like a puppet with cut strings. "Secure the key," a voice boomed from the smoke. It was a voice like grinding stones, deep and distorted by helmet modulation, terrifyingly commanding. "The resonance carrier, now!" "Varric," Kale breathed behind her. Lyra grabbed the stunned second soldier and hurled him bodily into the third, a mass of flailing limbs and sparking armor. She reached for her belt, for the heavy wrench she always carried, a tool that had saved her life more times than she could count. A disruptor beam hit her square in the chest. It wasn't a lethal bolt. It was an ionization charge designed to disable powered armor without killing the operator inside. Her suit locked up instantly. The cyan lights flickered and died. The servos froze mid-motion. Lyra fell to her knees, her muscles seizing. Her nervous system screamed white-hot agony as the suit became a paralyzed coffin around her. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even turn her head. "Lyra!" Kale screamed. She heard him lunge, heard the whisper of steel as he drew the concealed ceremonial dagger from his hip, a shard of crystalline glass sharper than any metal. He was fast, fluid, a dancer dealing death. Through the frozen visor of her helmet, she saw him slash at the nearest trooper. The blade opened the alien's throat in a spray of dark ichor. Kale spun, driving the dagger into the shoulder joint of another. exploiting the weak point with surgical precision. He wasn't just a diplomat. He'd been something else once, something dangerous, but he was fighting war machines. Varric stepped through the smoke, a towering wall of scarred gray flesh and black metal armor. 7 feet tall, broad as a cargo hauler. His species, Taurian, were built for heavy gravity worlds, built to endure. His face was hidden behind a helmet that looked like a skull, all sharp angles and predatory intent. He moved with deceptive speed for a creature of his mass. He backhanded Kale with one massive armored fist. The blow sent the dagger skittering across the floor. Kale flew, his body slamming into the railing hard enough to dent the metal. He gasped, blue blood trickling from his lip, his bioluminescence flickering like a dying star. "Do not damage the merchandise," Varric sneered, grabbing Kale by his magenta hair and hauling him up like a child. Kale clawed at the armor, his eyes burning with fury, but he was a diplomat fighting an apex warlord. "The bioresonance must be intact." Lyra fought the paralysis, her teeth ground together until she thought they would shatter. She tried to force the reboot command through her Neuralink, but the interface was sluggish, the system fighting against the ionization current still coursing through the suit's circuitry. "Let him go," she rasped. The words barely escaped her locked jaw. Varric turned his skull-faced helmet toward her, amusement dancing in the red optical sensors. "The architect speaks. How quaint." He gestured to two of his soldiers. "Disposal." The soldiers grabbed Lyra, their magnetic boots clanking as they dragged her immobilized body toward the shattered balcony doors, toward the void beyond. "Lyra!" Kale screamed her name, a sound of pure anguish that tore through her paralysis more effectively than any adrenaline shot. She watched him struggle, saw the terror in his amber eyes, not for himself, for her. "You made a mistake," Lyra rasped, her fingers twitching inside the gauntlets as the reboot sequence finally initiated. The cyan lights flickered weakly. "Varric, you made a mistake." "I make history," Varric replied, turning his back. He dragged Kale toward the interior doors, toward the tram system that connected the 5 stations. "Throw her out." They tossed her. Lyra tumbled into the silence of space. The artificial gravity cut off instantly. The cold hit her suit like a hammer, the vacuum trying to suck the air from her lungs through the microscopic pores of the emergency seals. She spun uncontrollably, the station rotating away from her, the lights of the ballroom shrinking into a distant glitter against the black. She didn't panic. Panic was for people who didn't understand the machine. Panic wasted oxygen. System reboot complete. The HUD inside her helmet flared to life, a comforting amber glow against the endless black. Oxygen levels stable, thrusters online. Lyra slammed her fist against her chest plate, engaging the manual override. The maneuvering jets on her back fired, arresting her spin with a bone-jarring halt that made her vision gray at the edges. She hung there in the black, suspended between stars and station. She looked at the massive spinning ring of Station 5, the spire she'd designed. The metal beast she had raised from nothing, bolt by bolt, weld by weld, for 10 years of her life. She saw Varric's shuttle undocking from the service bay, its engines flaring blue-white as it accelerated toward the transit tube connecting to Station 1, carrying the only thing in the universe that mattered. Lyra didn't scream. She didn't cry out. She looked at the station she had designed, the metal beast she had raised from nothing, and then she looked at the external maintenance hatch 30 meters below the ballroom, a hatch that didn't appear on any official schematic. A builder's back door. She fired her thrusters, streaking back toward the hull like a missile locked on target. She wasn't just coming back. She was coming to take it all apart. The airlock cycled with a hiss of repressurization that sounded like a dying breath. Lyra stepped out into the maintenance corridor of Station 1, the logistics hub. The air here tasted of recycled lubricant and the metallic tang of heavy industry. Colder than Station 5. More honest. She stripped off her helmet, magnetic locking it to her belt to conserve the suit's air scrubbers. Her auburn hair was matted with sweat, plastered to her skull. Her green eyes were hard and bloodshot, the pupils contracted to pinpoints. She wiped condensation from her face with the back of her gauntlet. She checked the diagnostic readout on her left arm. Suit integrity 72%, kinetic reserves full, plasma cutter online. The disruptor hit had burned out some secondary systems, but the core functions remained. She was operational. She was 3 hours behind them. 3 hours since Varric took KL. 3 hours since she was supposed to be dead. The station AI's voice chirped in her helmet comm. Unauthorized entry detected. Maintenance Base 7. Identify. Architect 01, Lyra said. Her voice was rough, scraped raw. Authorization Ashford Gamma 59er. A pause, then, welcome Architect Ashford. Warning, station security has been compromised. Hostile forces detected in Logistics Bay. Recommend immediate evacuation. Cancel that, Lyra said. She pulled up the station schematic on her gauntlet display, the holographic blueprint glowing cyan in the dim corridor. Give me a live feed. Logistics Bay, all sectors. The schematic came alive with red dots. Purity soldiers, dozens of them. They turned her station, her creation, into a fortress. She zoomed in on the central bay. Her breath caught. KL was there, being marched toward a heavy transport ship docked at the far end of the cavernous space. His hands were bound in energy shackles that glowed sickly green. He held his head high, his magenta hair flowing behind him like a banner of defiance. But Lyra could see the tremor in his shoulders, the slight drag in his step. He was terrified. Rage flooded her veins. Not hot, cold, sharp as the edge of a plasma cutter. It clarified the world, turned the complex geometry of the logistics bay into a simple equation of cause and effect. She walked down the narrow catwalk, looking down at the canyon of metal below. Shipping containers the size of houses, stacked 20 high in perfect rows. A maze designed for automated loaders and AI-controlled cranes. Not infantry. Hundreds of Purity soldiers patrolled the floor, setting up a perimeter around the transport. They thought they were secure. They thought a logistics hub was just a place for boxes. Lyra reached a wall-mounted access terminal. She placed her palm on the biometric scanner. The screen lit up with her credentials. 10 years of root access. 10 years of knowing every system, every override, every vulnerability she'd built into this place. Computer, she whispered. Access crane control. Authorization Architect 01. Access granted. Disable safety limiters on maglev clamps 1 through 50. Override proximity sensors. Warning, this action will compromise structural safety protocols. Confirm? Confirmed. Do it. She didn't have a gun. She didn't need one. She looked at the massive magnetic cranes suspended from the ceiling, each one holding multi-ton containers directly above the patrol routes, above the neat formations of Varric's forces. Below, the soldiers halted. Varric emerged from the transport ship, his black armor reflecting the harsh industrial lighting. He was shouting orders, pointing at the ship, gesturing at KL. He shoved KL forward toward the loading ramp. Lyra's finger hovered over the holographic interface on her wrist. Her heart was steady. Her hand didn't shake. She thought of KL's smile, the way he looked at her when she talked about weld integrity and structural mathematics, the way he made her feel like more than just a builder. She thought of Varric's hands on him. Watch your step, she whispered. She swiped down. 50 magnetic clamps disengaged simultaneously. The sound was deafening, a thunderclap of displacing air as 50 massive steel containers plummeted 4 stories. The floor of the bay shook with the impact of a meteor strike. Dust and debris exploded upward, a choking gray cloud that engulfed the Purity forces in an instant. Screams were cut short by the screech of tearing metal and the wet crunch of impact. Containers crushed soldiers like insects, the heavy cargo smashing through armor and flesh without distinction. The neat formations dissolved into chaos. Lyra didn't wait for the dust to settle. She vaulted over the catwalk railing, her suit's gravity boots flaring as she slid down a support pillar in a shower of sparks. Metal ground against metal, her armored gloves screaming against the steel. She landed in a 3-point crouch amidst the carnage. The bay was a slaughterhouse. Crushed metal, broken bodies, the acrid smell of hydraulic fluid and blood mixing on the deck plates. The Purity formation was shattered. Varric's elite guards scattered, buried under tons of cargo. Survivors stumbled in the dust, disoriented, their comms filled with screaming. Ambush! A lieutenant screamed, firing blindly into the haze. All units, defensive positions. Lyra moved. She was a white blur in the chaos. She grabbed a disoriented soldier by the throat. using the momentum of her suit's servos to slam him into the side of a container. The impact dented the metal. The alien crumpled, unconscious or dead. She didn't check. She scooped up the soldier's dropped shock baton, weighing it in her gauntlet. Crude. Effective. "Secure the prisoner!" Varick's voice roared from near the transport ship. "Get him on board! Now!" Lyra sprinted toward the voice, weaving through the maze of fallen containers. Her suit's heads-up display painted targets in red, tracking heat signatures through the dust. She moved with the efficiency of someone who'd walked these corridors 10,000 times. A squad of 3 blocked her path, raising their weapons. Lyra didn't slow. She slid on her knees, passing under their line of fire, and swung the baton upward in a vicious arc. The heavy metal cracked against the knee joint of the first guard. Armor buckled. The alien fell with a scream. Lyra rose, driving her armored shoulder into the second soldier, the kinetic dampeners in her suit flaring as she sent him flying into the third. She was efficient, brutal, silent. She didn't waste breath on battle cries. She broke into the clearing near the transport ship. Varick was dragging Kyle up the loading ramp, one massive hand clamped around his arm. Kale was fighting, his feet scrabbling for purchase on the metal, but Varick was too strong. "Lyra!" Kale cried out, seeing the white armored figure emerge from the dust like a vengeful ghost. His face lit up with hope and horror. Watching the violence surrounding her, Varick turned, his red optical sensors widening in what might have been surprise. "You." "Let him go," Lyra said. She walked forward, slow and steady. Her voice was calm, which made it terrifying. Varick sneered behind his skull helmet. He pulled a detonator from his belt, holding it up. "Another step and I blow the docking latches. The ship launches and the vacuum sucks everything in this bay out into the dark, including you." Lyra stopped. She looked at the detonator, then at the massive docking arm holding the transport ship in place, the hydraulic lines that fed the locking mechanism. Lines she had installed personally. Lines she'd pressure tested 100 times. "You think you control the door?" Lyra asked softly. "I control everything," Varick yelled. "No," Lyra said, raising her gauntlet. The plasma cutter hummed to life, a tight blue beam of superheated light. "You just rent the space." She triggered the emergency release valve on the high-pressure hydraulic main running along the wall next to the docking arm. The pipe burst with the force of a bomb. A jet of pressurized hydraulic fluid, moving at the speed of sound, sliced through the air like a solid beam. It hit the docking arm's support strut, shearing through the reinforced metal instantly. The massive docking arm collapsed. The transport ship, suddenly unsupported on one side, lurched violently, slamming into the bay wall. The impact was cataclysmic. The loading ramp twisted, throwing Varick off his feet. He dropped the detonator, sliding down the warped metal incline. "The ship is dead," Varick roared, realizing his escape vector was gone. He looked at his ruined vessel, engines flaring uselessly, then at Lyra, then at the heavy blast door leading deeper into the station chain. "Lyra, the hull!" Kale screamed. The ship's fusion engines were still firing, trying to compensate for the collapse, scorching the bay walls. The structural integrity of the sector was failing. Metal groaned, warning klaxons began to wail. "Run!" Lyra shouted at Kale. "Get to the emergency shelter, now!" Varick scrambled up from the wreckage. He made a tactical choice. He grabbed Kale again, not to take him to the ship, but to use him as a shield as he retreated toward the blast door. "Plan B!" Varick bellowed into his comms. "To the core! We proceed to Station 2 on foot." He dragged Kale through the heavy blast door leading to the transit tunnel. "Follow me and he bleeds." Lyra surged forward, her boots pounding against the deck plates. Her fingers brushed Kale's outstretched hand for a split second. Then Varick fired a flashbang grenade at her feet. The world went white. A high-pitched whine filled her helmet, overloading her audio sensors. She staggered, blind, the suit's compensators scrambling to adjust. When her vision cleared, the blast door was sealed. A heavy thud as the locking bolts engaged. She hit it with her shoulder, the impact reverberating through her bones. But it was reinforced titanium, locked from the other side. She stood there, breathing hard. The cyan lights on her suit pulsed rapidly, the power cell draining from the exertion. The logistics bay was in ruins around her, containers scattered like a child's toys, bodies cooling on the deck. Her transport ship twisted and dead against the wall. She had destroyed the first station. the first piece of her life's work, and Kyle was still gone. Lyra placed her hand on the cold metal of the blast door. She could feel the vibration of the tram car on the other side, moving away through the transit tunnel, moving towards Station 2, the power generation core. Station 2, Lyra muttered, pulling up the schematic on her display. The glowing blueprint showed the massive fusion reactors, the heat exchangers, the coolant systems, the reactors. She turned to the maintenance panel on the wall, ripping the cover off with her bare gauntlets. She didn't need to follow them through the door. She knew the veins of this station complex. She knew every path, every shortcut, every system. If they wanted to go to the core, she would make sure it was warm when they got there. But first, she needed intel. She tapped into the comms frequency her suit had picked up during the fight, the encrypted channel Varick's forces were using. Military-grade encryption, but she had root access to the station's communication arrays. She could crack it. The decryption took 47 seconds. Then Varick's voice crackled in her helmet, distorted by interference. Architect Ashford is relentless. She is destroying the infrastructure. We may not reach the extraction point. A second voice answered, deeper, synthetic. The extraction point is secondary. The sample is priority. Do you have the resonance carrier? I have him, Varick replied. There was a pause, the sound of movement. He is resilient. Good. The precursor vault beneath Station 5 requires a bioresonance signature to open. His living neural patterns are the key. Once we have the Genesis device, the stations are irrelevant. We will cleanse the sector. Lyra froze. The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. Precursor vault, Genesis device, neural patterns, key. She pulled up the deep scan architectural files on her display, the ones she had archived but never fully analyzed during construction. The ones that showed the anomaly in the asteroid core beneath Station 5. She had always assumed it was dense ore, a stable foundation for the spire. She was wrong. It was a door. A cold pit opened in her stomach. She hadn't just built a home for humanity and aliens to coexist. She had built a fortress on top of a doomsday device. And Kyle, her brilliant, gentle partner, was the biological key to unlocking it. They're not ransoming him, Lyra whispered, the horror of it settling into her bones. They're going to harvest him. The realization shifted everything. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. It was containment. She looked at the transit tunnel ahead. Varick was almost to Station 2. If they got to Station 5, if they opened that vault. I built it, Lyra said, her voice hardening into steel. She checked her suit's power reserves. 68%. Enough. I'll take it down. She accessed the maintenance shaft network, pulling up the fastest route to Station 2. Not the tram, the service crawlways. Tight, dangerous, but faster if you knew the way. She started moving, her white armor disappearing into the darkness of the maintenance shaft. Behind her, Station 1's logistics bay burned. Automated fire suppression systems kicked in, spraying foam over the wreckage. Somewhere ahead, in the heat and fury of Station 2's reactor core, Kale was waiting, trusting her, believing she would come. She would, and she would make Varick regret every second he touched him. The architect was no longer building. She was dismantling, one station at a time. The heat in Station 2 was a physical weight, a suffocating blanket that smelled of ionization and burning dust. This was the power generation ring, the beating heart of the 5-station complex, where massive fusion reactors turned matter into energy that kept 3,000 souls alive in the void. Lyra crawled through the primary coolant vent, the space tight and claustrophobic. Her white builder suit scraped against metal walls hot enough to sear unprotected skin. The cyan lights on her armor glowed intensely, working overtime to dissipate the thermal buildup, threatening to cook her alive inside the exoskeleton. Inside her helmet, the HUD flashed warnings in angry red. External temperature 450 Kelvin, internal temp rising, suit cooling at maximum capacity. Recommend immediate evacuation. Hold together, Lyra gritted out through clenched teeth, dragging herself forward by her elbows. Sweat poured down her face, stinging her eyes. The burn scar on her jaw throbbed with phantom pain, remembering the last time she'd been this close to a reactor core running too hot. She could hear them below, the grating of boots on metal deck plates, voices distorted by the heat shimmer. She found the maintenance vent looking down into the reactor control room and pressed her faceplate against the grating. Varric was there, pacing like a caged beast, his massive frame moving with predatory restlessness. And there, slumped in a chair with his wrists still bound in energy shackles, was Kyle. Lyra's heart clenched. His beautiful blue skin looked pale in the harsh emergency lighting, his bioluminescence flickering weakly. He was sweating, the heat affecting him more than it would affect the Taurians. His species came from temperate aquatic worlds. This dry, searing heat was torture for him. The human broke the logistics hub, Varric snarled at a technician frantically typing at a console. How is that possible? One woman? She overloaded the hydraulic shears, sir, the technician stammered, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. She used the station's own systems against us, used our tactical positioning to maximize casualties with the container drop. Varric slammed his fist onto the console. The metal buckled. Then lock her out, isolate the grid, revoke her access. I can't, sir, the technician's voice was pure terror. Her clearance codes are embedded in the root architecture. She wrote the base systems. She is the system. Lyra allowed herself a grim smile inside her helmet. 10 years of building, 10 years of programming fail-safes and backdoors and override protocols. They thought they could lock her out of her own creation. She reached into her utility belt and pulled out a multi-tool. She located the flow regulator for the magnetic containment field of Reactor 2 Alpha, the primary power source for this entire ring. She didn't want to blow the station. Not yet. She just needed to flush them out. She needed to make the room uninhabitable for everyone except the woman in the heat-shielded suit. Lyra jammed the tool into the servo motor controlling the coolant flow. She reversed the polarity with 3 quick twists. The effect was immediate. Warning. The automated station voice announced, sounding absurdly calm despite the impending doom. Coolant flow reversed. Core temperature rising. Thermal runaway imminent in 120 seconds. Below, the lights shifted from sterile white to a menacing, pulsing red. Steam began to hiss from the joints in the floor plates, rising in ghostly columns. The temperature spiked 15 degrees in as many seconds. What did you do? Varric grabbed the technician by the neck, lifting him off his feet. What happened? It's not me. The technician clawed at Varric's armored hand, gasping. The coolant is dumping into the reactor instead of the heat exchangers. The room is going to cook. We have maybe 2 minutes before the radiation shielding fails. Lyra kicked the grate out. It fell with a metallic clang onto the deck below. She dropped down after it, landing in a 3-point crouch between Varric and Kale. Steam billowed around her white suit, making her look like a wraith emerging from hell itself. The heat was already blistering. The Purity soldiers were clawing at their collars, their eyes watering, their armor's internal cooling systems screaming in protest. You, Varric gasped, taking an involuntary step back. Lyra stood up slowly. The steam parted around her like she was the eye of a storm. She looked at Kael. His amber eyes were wide, fixed on her with an expression that was equal parts relief and horror at the violence she'd unleashed. Can you run? She asked him, her voice amplified by her helmet speakers. Kael nodded weakly. The heat. I don't know how long. I know, Lyra turned to Varric. It's getting hot in here, Varric. About 600 degrees in the next minute. Your armor's cooling system, good for that? Varric drew his weapon, but his hand was shaking from the thermal shock. The heat distortion was already making targeting impossible. Kill her, he roared at his soldiers. The soldiers tried to aim, but the superheated air was creating mirages. Their targeting systems couldn't lock on. They fired blindly. Plasma bolts scorched the walls, missing Lyra by meters. Lyra didn't attack them. She attacked the room. She grabbed a heavy steam pipe running along the wall, wrapped both gauntlets around it, and wrenched it free with a scream of exertion. Her suit's servos whined in protest, the stress indicators flashing yellow. The pipe tore away from its moorings with a shriek of tortured metal. Superheated vapor exploded outward, a wall of scalding white noise that filled the room in seconds. The soldiers screamed, dropping their weapons to cover their faces. The steam was 200 degrees, hot enough to cause third-degree burns through armor gaps. Lyra lunged through the chaos, grabbing Kael. She pulled him against her chest, wrapping her arms around him, trying to shield him with her suit's thermal dampeners. Her armor took the brunt of the heat, the ceramic plating glowing faintly orange. "Hold on to me," she commanded. "Do not let go." "Where are we going?" Kael yelled over the roar of escaping steam. Lyra didn't head for the door. She headed for the waste disposal chute. "Lyra, that leads to the incinerator." Kael's eyes went wide with realization. "Trust me." She kicked the chute's access panel open. The dark mouth of the disposal system yawned before them. Varric fired blindly through the steam. A plasma bolt scorched Lyra's shoulder plate, leaving a black scar on the white composite. The impact spun her halfway around, but she didn't flinch. She didn't feel pain, only purpose. She jumped, pulling Kael with her into the dark, slick slide of the disposal system. They tumbled into darkness. Lyra wrapped herself around Kael, taking the impacts against the slide's walls with her armored back. They fell for what felt like forever, spinning, sliding, the walls rushing past in a blur. They landed in a heap of synthetic refuse in the lower collection bay. It was cooler here, damp. The air smelled of rot and recycled organics, but it was breathable, safe. Behind them, above them, the reactor control room erupted. Not an explosion, a thermal overload. The coolant system finally gave up, venting superheated plasma into the compartment. Everything inside flash-boiled. Metal, plastic, flesh. Lyra groaned, rolling onto her back. Her suit was beeping alarms. The shoulder plate where the plasma bolt had hit was fused, the joint seized. The cyan light on her left shoulder was dead. "Lyra." Kael scrambled over to her, his hands frantic on her chest plate. "Your armor. You're damaged." She sat up, wincing. Everything hurt. Her muscles felt like they'd been run through a grinder. "I'm fine," she said, retracting her helmet. Her face was flushed red from the heat, her auburn hair soaked with sweat. Kael was staring at her. His magenta hair was matted, plastered to his skull. His skin had flushed from azure to deep purple from the heat stress. But he was alive. He reached out, touching her faceplate before it fully retracted. Then his cool fingers found her cheek. He kissed her, tasting of salt and survival and desperation. Lyra kissed him back, her hand tangling in his hair, grounding herself in the reality of him. Alive. Breathing. Here. "You destroyed the reactor," Kael said when they broke apart, breathless. "You destroyed your own station." "That was Station 2, Lyra said. She checked her gauntlet display. "Varric will fall back to Station 3. We need to move." "Wait," Kael grabbed her arm. "There's something you need to know. About the vault. About why they want me." Lyra looked at him. "I heard them on the comms. You're some kind of key. Bioresonance. They're going to extract your neural pattern." "It's worse than that." Kael stood, helping her to her feet. "The vault isn't just Torian. It's older. Much older. It's precursor technology. Ancient Aquarian, from before the collapse 50,000 years ago." He turned away, his bioluminescence pulsing with distress. "My grandmother wasn't fully Aquarian. She was a hybrid, part precursor. The old race that built the Genesis device and then vanished. My family carried the genetic key through generations. We didn't even know what it was for. Just an old legend, a song in our DNA." Lyra felt the pieces clicking into place. "The device, what is it?" "A terraform engine," Kael said quietly. "It can reshape biospheres, turn dead worlds into gardens, or reverse the process, turn gardens into ash." He looked at her with haunted eyes. "Varric's homeworld is dying, stellar radiation poisoning. His species has maybe a generation left. He wants to use the device to terraform a new planet, save his people." "And Commander Cross?" Lyra asked. She'd caught fragments of another voice on the intercept. Human, authoritative. "Cross wants it too. There's a radiation plague spreading through the outer colonies. Degenerative, killing millions. He thinks the device can cure it, reverse the cellular damage." Lyra pulled up the architectural files on her display. The deep scans of Station 5's foundation, the asteroid core, the anomalies she dismissed as dense ore. "I built the stations on top of it," she whispered, horror creeping into her voice. "I built the entire complex without knowing." Not randomly. Kael moved closer, looking at her display. "Look at the spatial arrangement. The 5 stations form a geometric pattern, sacred geometry. It's a harmonic array. Lyra zoomed out, looking at the station complex from above. Her breath caught. The 5 stations weren't just connected by transit tubes. They formed a perfect 5-pointed star, with Station 5 at the apex. Each station positioned at exact intervals around the central asteroid. The precursors built their technology on resonance principles. Kale continued. Harmony. Frequency. The device needs an amplifier to activate at full power. Your stations are the amplifier. How long? Lyra asked. How long has this been planned? 10 years, a new voice said. They spun. A holographic projection flickered to life in the corner of the waste bay. A man's face, hard and weathered. Gray hair cut military short. Eyes like flint. Commander Nathaniel Cross, U.S. Space Command. Hello, Architect Ashford, Cross said. I've been waiting a long time to speak with you. Lyra's hand went to her wrench, but holograms couldn't be hit. You planted the blueprints, the sacred geometry. You made me build the array. I embedded the specifications into the construction contract 10 years ago, Cross admitted. There was no shame in his voice, only tired determination. Hidden in the structural stress calculations. You're brilliant, Lyra, but you trusted the numbers. You never questioned why the stations needed to be positioned exactly where they were. Why? Lyra demanded. Why do this? Cross's face softened for just a moment. Behind him, she could see a medical bay. In one of the beds, barely visible, was a young woman, pale, unconscious. Radiation burns visible even through the holostatic. My daughter, Cross said quietly. She was on the colony ship that passed through the Scorpio belt during the solar flare 6 years ago, along with 40,000 others. The radiation is killing them slowly. Cellular degeneration, there is no cure. His voice hardened. But the Genesis device can reverse organic damage at the molecular level. It can save them. By working with terrorists, Lyra said. By kidnapping KL. By murdering innocent people. By doing what's necessary. Cross slammed his fist down. I served 30 years in Space Command. I followed every rule, played every political game, and they told me there was nothing they could do for my daughter. For any of them. So I found another way. A way that puts billions at risk, KL said. If the device activates at full power with the station array amplifying it, it won't just cure radiation sickness. It will rewrite the biosphere of every planet in the sector. Terraform or destroy, depending on who controls it. I don't need full power, Cross said. Just enough for one targeted pulse, one cure. Then we shut it down. Varric won't stop with one pulse, Lyra said. He'll use it to save his homeworld. And if you fight over control, the device could destabilize. You're playing with forces you don't understand. Then help me. Cross's projection leaned forward. You built this, Lyra. You can help me control it. We save my daughter. We save Varric's people. Everyone wins. Lyra looked at the stations on her display. Her life's work. 10 years of bleeding into the void. 10 years of every skill she possessed poured into steel and circuitry. She looked at KL, his amber eyes searching hers, trusting her to make the right choice. She looked at Cross's daughter, dying in her hospital bed. No, Lyra said. What? Cross's face went rigid. You don't get to play God with my stations. Lyra accessed the command override for the transit system. You used me. You turned my work into a weapon, and I'm taking it back. Lyra, think about what you're doing. I am. She pulled up the separation bolt controls for Station 4, the fail-safe she'd built in case one station needed to be quarantined. The harmonic array needs all 5 stations intact to amplify the device. Break the array, the device stays dormant. You'll doom millions, Cross shouted. No, Lyra said. I'll save billions from your desperation. She entered the authorization code. Computer, prepare to sever Station 4 from the complex. Authorization Ashford Gamma 59er. Confirm. Warning, severance will cause catastrophic structural damage. Station 4 will drift. All transit connections will be lost. Confirm? Confirmed, Kale grabbed her arm. Lyra, if you do this, we'll be trapped. Station 4 will separate and we're standing on Station 2. Varric is heading to Station 3 with hostages. If the stations separate, we'll have no way to reach Station 5. I know, Lyra said, but if I don't, Cross and Varric will tear each other apart fighting over the device. and the whole sector burns. She looked at him. You told me to trust my instincts. This is what they're telling me. Break the weapon, even if it costs us everything. Coyle stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Together then. Lyra pressed execute. Somewhere above them, explosive bolts fired. The clamps holding Station 4 to the rest of the complex blew outward in silent detonations, visible only as shudders through the deck plates. The entire station lurched. The artificial gravity flickered. Cross's hologram distorted. His face twisted in rage. You've killed them! You've killed them all! No, Lyra said quietly. I stopped you from killing everyone. The connection cut out. Alarms began to wail throughout Station 2. The structural integrity warnings that Lyra knew by heart. The station was stable, but the complex was wounded now, unbalanced. Varric will panic, Kale said. He'll move faster. He has hostages in the habitation ring. Station 3. Lyra pulled up the schematic. 2,000 civilians live there, families, children. He'll use them as shields. Can we reach it? Kale asked. Lyra studied the transit map. Station 2 to Station 3. The connection was still intact. Yes, but we need to move now before he locks down the transit tubes. They ran. The transit car was small, designed for maintenance crew transfers. Lyra and Kale crowded into the cramped space, and she manually overrode the departure sequence. The car accelerated into the tube, a silver bullet streaking through vacuum toward the habitation ring. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Lyra could see Station 4 drifting away from the complex, spinning slowly as it fell into an uncontrolled tumble. Her chest ached watching it. Another piece of her life's work destroyed. I'm sorry, Kale said softly. He understood what it cost her. Don't be. Lyra checked her weapons. Wrench, plasma cutter, shock baton. Not much against an army, but she'd made do before. It was just metal. You're what matters. The transit car decelerated, entering Station 3's receiving dock. Lyra could see the habitation ring through the windows. It was beautiful, a rotating cylinder designed to simulate Earth gravity and climate. Hanging gardens, residential towers, artificial sunlight streaming through massive windows. Now it was a prison. As the car came to a stop, Lyra saw them. Purity soldiers everywhere, hundreds of them. And in the central plaza, corralled like cattle, were the civilians. Men, women, children, all herded together, surrounded by armed guards. Varric stood on a raised platform, his black armor visible even from this distance. He was shouting orders, pointing at defensive positions. He's fortified the entire ring, Kale breathed. We can't fight through that many. No, Lyra agreed. We can't fight them. She pulled up the station's environmental controls. The gravity plating, the atmospheric processors, the structural systems she'd designed to make this place livable. But I don't have to fight them, Lyra said. I just have to change the rules. She accessed the gravity plate network. The habitation ring used localized artificial gravity generators beneath the floor to create the Earth-standard 1G environment. Lyra had designed the system with modular control. Each sector could be adjusted independently for maintenance. She isolated the coordinates where Varric's forces were positioned. The outer defensive ring, the sniper nests, the heavy weapon emplacements. Lyra, Kale said, watching her fingers dance across the interface. What are you doing? Gravity, Lyra murmured, calculating load factors in her head. It's just another tool. She spiked the gravity in the outer sectors to 4 times Earth normal. The effect was instantaneous and brutal. Soldiers standing in the defensive perimeter didn't just fall. They were slammed into the deck plates as if a giant invisible hand had swatted them from the sky. Armor buckled under the sudden weight. Bones snapped with sounds like dry branches breaking. They couldn't lift their weapons, couldn't even lift their heads. They were pinned, gasping, their own body weight turning into a lethal weapon. The civilians in the center plaza, standing on unmodified 1G sectors, screamed in terror but remained unharmed. They watched their captors flatten against the floor like insects crushed under glass. Sector 4, 5, and 9 venting atmosphere, Lyra announced calmly, triggering the emergency decompression in the sniper towers. The skylights above the elevated positions blew outward. Sudden decompression sucked the snipers out of their hides, pulling them into the artificial sky before emergency shutters slammed down, sealing the breaches. In the plaza, Varric roared in fury, fighting against the partial gravity flux near his position. He grabbed one of the fleeing civilians, a middle-aged woman, dragging her toward the transit hub doors. "All units, tactical retreat," Varric bellowed. "Fall back to Station 5. Execute emergency protocol." But his units couldn't move, couldn't retreat. They were locked to the floor by their own augmented mass. Lyra and Kyle stepped out of the transit car into chaos. Lyra moved with purpose, activating her magnetic boots. She walked along the wall of the concourse, perpendicular to the panicked crowd below, defying the station's orientation. She reached the transit hub control room just as Varric and his remaining squad of elite guards retreated into the tube leading to Station 5. He still had the civilian woman, using her as a human shield. But he'd grabbed someone else too, Dr. Elena Thorpe, the chief of Station 4's research division. A tall woman with sharp features and silver-streaked black hair. She was fighting, her elbow slamming into a guard's helmet, but she was a scientist against soldiers. "Dr. Thorpe knows the vault defense grid," Kale said, watching through the control room window. "She consulted on the deep core surveys when they were mapping the asteroid. If Varric has her, he can navigate the vault's security systems," Lyra finished. "He doesn't need the full station array anymore. He can try a brute force approach with her knowledge." The transit tube doors were closing. Varric's shuttle was already accelerating toward Station 5. Lyra made a decision. She couldn't stop him from reaching the vault, but she could make sure he didn't have the power to use what he found there. "Kale, stay here," she said. "Help the civilians. Get them to emergency shelters. If this goes wrong—" "I'm coming with you," Kale interrupted. "No." Lyra grabbed his shoulders. "I need you here. I need you safe. And I need you to coordinate with whatever's left of station security. If I fail, if Varric gets the device active, someone needs to warn the sector. That's you." Kale's amber eyes searched hers. She could see the argument forming, the protests, but he also saw the truth. She was right. "Come back to me," he said. "Always." She kissed him, quick and fierce. Then she was gone, sprinting toward the next transit car, chasing Varric into the depths of her creation. The last intact connection. Station 3 to Station 5. The final approach to the spire. And beneath it, waiting in ancient darkness, the Genesis device that could save worlds or end them. Lyra checked her suit's power. 42%. Weapons online. Plasma cutter damaged but functional. She was one woman against an army, racing toward a vault built by a civilization that died 50,000 years ago. But she'd built this station. Every bolt, every weld, every system. And she would tear it all down before she let them use it to become gods. The transit car accelerated into the tube, and Station 5 loomed ahead like a spear pointed at the stars. Station 5 rose before her like a cathedral built by giants. The spire, the crown jewel of the complex. Lyra had designed it to be both functional and beautiful, a statement that humanity and alien species could build something magnificent together in the void. Now she was going to destroy it. The transit car docked with a pneumatic hiss. Lyra stepped out into the upper concourse, her white armor stark against the polished walls. This station was different from the others. Cleaner, more elegant. The floors were actual marble, imported at devastating cost from Earth. The walls held art, real paintings, not holograms. This was where the diplomats worked, where treaties were signed, where the future was supposed to be negotiated. It was empty now, evacuated. Varric had cleared it, sending the staff fleeing to Station 3. Only his soldiers remained, and somewhere far below, in the roots of the asteroid itself, the vault waited. Lyra's heads-up display painted heat signatures through the walls, 30 hostiles between her and the central lift shaft. Varric had left a rear guard. He was expecting pursuit. Her comm crackled. Kale's voice, distant but clear. He'd managed to tap into the station's communication array from Station 3's control room. "Lyra, I'm reading your position. You've got a significant force between you and the vault access. I'm pulling up the security feeds now." "What do you see?" Lyra asked, moving through the corridors with practiced efficiency. She knew every turn, every door. This was her house. Varric's taken Dr. Thorpe and the civilian hostage down to sub-level 9. That's as far as the elevators go. The vault itself is another kilometer down, carved into the asteroid core. There's a manual access shaft, but it's heavily defended. Lyra pulled up the schematic on her gauntlet. The vault. She'd always known there was something there, some anomaly in the deep scans, but she'd never investigated. It was supposed to be just rock, dense metallic ore that made the perfect anchor for the station. Kyle, she said quietly, if I can't stop them, if they activate the device, you'll stop them, he interrupted. There was absolute certainty in his voice. You built the impossible. You survived vacuum. You destroyed 3 stations with industrial tools and pure tactical genius. You're not just an engineer, Lyra, you're a force of nature. Despite everything, she smiled. Flatterer. Realist, he corrected. Now listen, I've been analyzing the device specifications from the old Aquarian archives. If they try to activate it with the station array damaged, the resonance will be unstable. It could trigger a cascade effect. Meaning? Meaning it could explode. Or worse, activate randomly, pulsing terraform energy in uncontrolled bursts. Think of it like a fusion reactor without magnetic containment. The power has to go somewhere. Lyra's mind raced, building scenarios, calculating possibilities. What if we could control the release? One pulse, directed, then permanent shutdown. There was a pause. Theoretically possible, but someone would need to be inside the device's energy matrix to manually override the resonance frequency. The radiation exposure would be lethal. How lethal? Lyra, how lethal, Kale? Another pause. Longer. Survivable, but with permanent cellular damage, reduced lifespan, scarring, potential organ failure within 20 years instead of 60. Lyra looked at her gauntlet display, at the station schematic, at the vault pulsing like a malignant heart beneath her feet. 20 years. 20 years with Kyle. 20 years to build something new, something clean, without the weight of this mistake hanging over her. Versus billions dead if the device fell into the wrong hands. Or remained dormant but unstable. A ticking bomb in the sector's heart. I can live with that, she said. Lyra, no. We'll talk about it later. Right now, I need to reach that vault. She turned a corner and came face to face with a 4-man patrol. The soldiers raised their weapons. Lyra was faster. She grabbed an emergency fire extinguisher from the wall mount and hurled it at the lead soldier. It hit him in the chest with enough force to crack his armor, sending him sprawling. The extinguisher ruptured, spraying chemical foam across the corridor, filling the air with white clouds. Lyra charged through the foam, a white ghost in a white storm. She drove her shoulder into the second soldier. The kinetic dampeners in her suit flaring as she transferred her momentum into him. He flew backward, crashing through a decorative window. The third soldier got a shot off. The plasma bolt grazed her hip, scorching her armor. Lyra spun, using the plasma cutter on her left gauntlet to slice through his rifle barrel. The weapon exploded in his hands. The fourth soldier tried to run. Lyra grabbed him by his armor's backplate and slammed him face first into the marble floor. He went limp. Contact at Junction 7, she burned through their open comms. Architect is heading for central shaft. All units converge. Lyra crushed the comm unit under her boot. She ran. The central lift shaft was a cylinder of polished steel descending into darkness. The main elevator was at the bottom, called down by Varric. But Lyra didn't need the elevator. She stepped onto the maintenance ladder running down the shaft's interior wall and started to climb down. Fast. Her magnetic boots clanged against each rung with rhythmic precision. Down, down, down into the depths of the asteroid. The temperature dropped. The air grew stale, tasting of ancient rock and something else. Something that made her teeth ache with a vibration she felt more than heard. I'm picking up unusual energy signatures, Kale said in her helmet. The vault is already active at low power. Varric must have started preliminary activation. How long until full power? Unknown, but Lyra, I'm also detecting another group. Military transponders. U.S. Space Command. Cross sent troops. Of course he did. Cross wouldn't give up just because she'd broken his harmonic array. He'd try a direct assault, take the device by force. This is about to get complicated, Lyra muttered. She reached sublevel 9 and stepped off the ladder into a world of stone and metal, married together in ways that defied her engineering knowledge. The vault antechamber. The walls here weren't station construction. They were older, black iridescent stone that seemed to drink light, carved with geometric patterns that hurt to look at too long. In the center of the chamber stood a massive doorway. Not a door, just an opening carved in impossible angles, leading down into deeper darkness. And from that darkness came a sound like singing, a harmonic vibration that resonated in her bones. Lyra moved forward, every sense alert. She could hear voices echoing from below. Varric's grinding bass, Dr. Thorpe's sharp alto, angry and defiant, and another voice, human, giving orders. Cross's troops had beaten her here. She descended into the vault. The space opened up around her like the inside of a cathedral built for gods. The cavern was enormous, easily 200 meters across. The walls were the same black stone, but here they glowed with circuitry that pulsed like veins carrying luminescent blood. Ancient technology, still functioning after 50 millennia, and in the center, rising from the stone floor like a monument to forgotten power, stood the Genesis device. It was beautiful and terrible. A monolith 30 feet tall, composed of geometric shapes that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. Crystalline and metallic and something else entirely. It pulsed with inner light, cycling through colors that had no names in human language. Around it, chaos. Varric's forces had taken positions on the eastern side of the chamber, using the natural rock formations as cover. Maybe 20 soldiers, their black armor blending with the shadows. Cross's troops, in U.S. Space Command Gray, held the western approach. 30 soldiers, better equipped, with heavy plasma rifles and portable shield generators. And caught between them, bound to a control panel carved from the living rock, were Dr. Thorpe and the civilian woman Varric had taken. Thorpe was working frantically at the ancient interface, her fingers tracing glowing symbols. The civilian woman, whose name Lyra didn't know, was weeping quietly. "Faster!" Varric roared at Thorpe. "Override the containment protocols." "I'm trying," Thorpe shot back. "This technology is 50,000 years old. I'm translating on the fly." "Stand down, Varric." The voice came from Cross's position. Not Cross himself, but a lieutenant, a woman with hard eyes and harder voice. "Commander Cross offers terms. Surrender the resonance carrier's biodata. We'll use the device for medical purposes only. Your people get the terraform specifications to save your homeworld. Everyone wins." Varric laughed, a sound like stones grinding. "I don't negotiate with liars. Cross wants control, permanent control. I've seen the projections. Your radiation plague is spreading. You'll terraform every contested world to human-compatible specs and call it mercy." "That's not enough talk!" Varric raised his arm. "Open fire!" The vault erupted in violence. Plasma fire crisscrossed the chamber, painting the ancient walls in strobing light and shadow. Varric's forces and Cross's troops exchanged volleys, using the rock formations as cover. The Genesis device stood untouched in the center, its energy field deflecting stray shots. Lyra moved. She didn't enter the firefight. She went around it using the shadows and her knowledge of three-dimensional tactics. She climbed. The vault walls were rough stone, easy handholds for her armored gauntlets. She ascended to the natural ledges running along the chamber's perimeter, staying out of the sightlines. "Kyle," she whispered into her comm, "I need information. The device. How do I shut it down?" "You can't," Kale replied. His voice was strained. He was watching her vitals, seeing her heart rate spike. "Not from outside. The precursors built it to be indestructible, self-sustaining. It draws power from quantum vacuum fluctuations. It literally can't be turned off from the exterior. Then I go inside." "Lyra, I'm not asking permission." She moved along the ledge, circling toward the control panel where Thorpe was working. "I need to know how to trigger the partial activation. One pulse, the medical cure, then manual shutdown from inside." She could hear Kale breathing, trying to find another way, failing. "There's an access port at the base of the device," he finally said, "designed for maintenance. You'd need to remove your helmet to interface directly. The neural connection is organic, not digital. And once you're inside the energy matrix, you'll have maybe 90 seconds before the radiation damage becomes irreversible." 90 seconds to save billions, Lyra said. "I've worked faster." She dropped from the ledge, landing behind Varric's position. 2 soldiers spun toward her. She didn't fight them. She grabbed a loose rock the size of her head and hurled it at the control panel. The rock smashed into the ancient interface. Sparks flew. The panel went dark. "No!" Thorpe screamed. Varric whirled. You! The firefight stopped, both sides staring at the white armored figure standing in the dim light of the vault. This ends, Lyra said. Her voice echoed in the chamber. All of you, stand down. Architect Ashford, Cross's lieutenant called out, you're making a mistake. We can control this. Use it responsibly. No one controls this, Lyra replied. It's not a tool, it's a force of nature. And your children playing with fire. Varric raised his weapon, pointing it at Dr. Thorpe's head. Step away from the device, human, or the scientist dies. Lyra looked at Thorpe. The older woman met her eyes, and Lyra saw something there. Understanding. Thorpe knew what the device could do, had studied it for years. She gave the tiniest nod. I'm sorry, Lyra said to her. Then she ran, not away from the device, toward it. Varric fired. The plasma bolt missed by centimeters. Lyra's suit registered the heat wash. Alarm screaming. She didn't slow. Cross's troops opened fire. Not at Lyra, at Varric, trying to protect their chance at salvation. Varric's soldiers returned fire. The vault became a storm of energy and violence and desperation. Lyra reached the Genesis device. Up close, it was overwhelming. The geometric patterns shifted and writhed. The harmonic vibration was so intense her vision blurred. She could feel it in her DNA, in the mitochondria of her cells. This thing was alive in ways she couldn't comprehend. She found the access port, a circular depression at the base exactly where Kale said it would be. It was glowing, waiting. Lyra, wait! Kale's voice in her helmet, desperate. Let me find another way. There has to be another way. There isn't. Lyra placed her hand on the access port. It was warm, almost body temperature. I love you, remember that. Lyra, don't. She retracted her helmet. The air in the vault was cold and tasted of ozone and something sweet like dying flowers. The harmonic sound was louder without the helmet's audio dampening. It made her teeth ache. She pressed her bare palm against the port. The connection was instant and absolute. Her nervous system lit up like she'd grabbed a live wire. Information flooded into her mind. Not words, not images, pure data, schematics, instructions, protocols written in a language older than human civilization. And she understood. The device was a seed, designed to be planted in barren worlds and sing them to life, to reshape carbon and nitrogen and oxygen into patterns that supported complex biology. It was creation itself, crystallized, but it could also sing the reverse song, death, decay, silence, and it was waking up. Varric's attempted activation and Cross's interference had destabilized it. It was building toward an uncontrolled release that would pulse terraform energy in random directions. Planets, moons, stations, no discrimination. Billions would die. Not immediately, but their worlds would change beneath them. Atmospheres would shift. Gravity would fluctuate. Ecosystems would collapse. Unless someone directed the pulse, controlled the frequency, sang the right song. Lyra's builder suit had been with her for 10 years. Every weld she'd made near the station sites, every plasma arc, every energy discharge had left its signature in the suit's power core. A unique electromagnetic fingerprint. The device recognized it, recognized the harmony of creation, the resonance of something built with purpose and care. She could use it, could shape the pulse. One directed beam, medical, cellular regeneration. Cure the radiation plague. Give Varric's people the terraform data they needed for their new world. One gift, one mercy, and then silence the device forever. But it would cost her. The manual override required her to be inside the energy matrix when it fired. The radiation exposure would burn through her cellular structure. Not lethal, but permanent. 20 years instead of 60. I'm sorry, she whispered. Not to KL, to herself, to the life she wouldn't live. She stepped into the device. The world disappeared. She was inside light, inside sound, inside the fundamental frequency of creation itself. Her suit's energy signature began to pulse, synchronizing with the device. She could feel it draining her power core, using her as a conduit, a living circuit board. Outside in the vault, the Genesis device flared to life. Blinding white light filled the chamber. The firefight stopped. Everyone stared at the monolith as it sang. Lyra shaped the pulse, drew on every calculation she'd ever made, every stress test, every load-bearing analysis. She built the frequency like she'd built the stations, with precision, with care, with love. The pulse released. It wasn't an explosion, it was a wave, invisible but felt in every living cell. It spread outward from the vault at the speed of light, washing over the station complex, over the frontier belt, over the colonies dying from radiation sickness. Cellular damage reversed, DNA repaired, organs regenerated. 40,000 people on hospital ships felt their pain disappear as their bodies remembered how to heal, and carried in the pulse written in harmonic data were the terraform specifications Varex's people needed. Not weaponized, just knowledge. The gift of understanding how to reshape their new world. One pulse, one mercy. The device began to scream. The uncontrolled feedback Lyra had predicted. It was going to overload, going to tear itself apart and take the station with it. Lyra forced the shutdown command through her connection. She sang the counter frequency, the inverse of creation. The silence, the device fought her. 50,000 years of programming resisting shutdown. But she was the architect. She knew how to break things as well as build them. The Genesis device went dark. Lyra stumbled out of the energy matrix, falling to her knees. Her skin was burning. Not fire, radiation. She could feel it in her cells, the damage already done. Her auburn hair would fall out. Her skin would scar. Her organs would struggle. 20 years, maybe less. But she was alive, and the device was dead. Varek stood there, staring at the darkened monolith. His dream of saving his people was gone, but the data was transmitted. They had what they needed, just not the weapon. Cross's lieutenant lowered her weapon. Medical reports were flooding in on the command net. The radiation plague was cured, 40,000 saved. Her orders were complete. Dr. Thorpe was crying, relief and horror mixed together. She'd helped almost trigger genocide, but she'd also witnessed a miracle. Then the vault began to shake. Structural failure, Lyra said, her voice rough. The device drew too much power from the asteroid's core. The foundation is compromised. The floor cracked. A fissure opened across the chamber. Splitting it in half, rock began to fall from the ceiling. "Everyone out!" Cross's lieutenant screamed. "Evacuate! Now!" Soldiers from both sides ran for the exit shaft. Varek grabbed Dr. Thorpe and the civilian woman, dragging them towards safety. Even in defeat, he wouldn't let them die. Lyra tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. The radiation damage was setting in faster than she'd calculated. Her muscles were sluggish, her nervous system firing erratically. "Lyra!" Kale's voice intercom, desperate. "The vault is collapsing. Get out!" "Working on it," she gasped. A section of ceiling collapsed, blocking the main exit. Soldiers were trapped, screaming. Lyra saw Dr. Thorpe free herself from Varek's grip and run to a control panel on the wall. The older woman placed her hands on the ancient interface, accessing systems Lyra didn't know existed. A secondary passage opened, a narrow shaft leading up. "Go!" Thorpe shouted. "All of you, go!" Varek hesitated for half a second. Then he ran, taking his soldiers with him. Cross's troops followed, scrambling up the emergency shaft. Lyra crawled toward the shaft. Every movement was agony. Her suit's power was dead. The servos were locked. She was dragging 40 pounds of useless armor. "Lyra, you have to move faster," Kale's voice breaking. "The asteroid's structural integrity is at 15%. If it breaks apart, the entire station chain will..." She knew exactly what would happen. The station complex was anchored to this asteroid. If it shattered, the sudden release of rotational energy would tear the stations apart. Everything, everyone still aboard, gone. "The gravity anchors," she said. "Kale, can you access them from Station 3? "What? Lyra, no." "Can you access them?" A pause. "Yes, but if I release the anchors, the station chain will drift. We'll lose orbital stability." "Do it. Release them. Let the stations drift away from the asteroid before it breaks apart. Save everyone else." "What about you?" His voice was small, broken. "I'll find a way." She didn't believe it. Neither did he. More ceiling collapsed. Dust filled the vault. The Genesis device, darkened and silent, began to crack. 50,000 years of existence, ending in fire and stone. Then hands grabbed her. Dr. Thorpe, the scientist, had come back. She was trying to lift Lyra, to drag her toward the shaft. but she wasn't strong enough. "Leave me," Lyra said. "Save yourself." "Shut up," Thorpe replied. "I've been waiting my whole life to see this device. I'm not letting the woman who shut it down die in front of me." Together they crawled toward the shaft. It was too slow. The vault was coming down around them. Then another figure dropped down from the shaft, moving with impossible speed. "KL, you absolute fool," Lyra breathed. "I told you to stay safe." "And I ignored you," Kale said. His blue skin was flushed purple from exertion. He'd run from Station 3 to Station 5, through transit tubes and maintenance shafts, in minutes. Impossible, unless you were desperate. He lifted Lyra with surprising strength. Aquarians were stronger than they looked. "Hold on to me." "The anchors." "Already released," he said. "The stations are drifting away. But we have maybe 30 seconds before this whole asteroid comes apart." He carried her. Dr. Thorpe followed. They climbed the emergency shaft as the vault collapsed beneath them. Rock and ancient technology mixing in destruction. They emerged into the sublevels of Station 5. Alarms were wailing. The station was shaking. Through the windows, Lyra could see the other stations drifting away, the chain broken, each one on its own trajectory now. "Escape pod," Lyra said. "Base 7, it's closest." They ran. The station lurched. The asteroid was breaking apart. Through the windows, Lyra saw it happening. The massive rock splitting like an egg, fragments spinning away in all directions. The Genesis device, buried at its heart, imploded. A flash of light, then nothing. Gone. Destroyed forever. They reached the escape pod bay, a dozen small spherical survival craft, designed for emergencies exactly like this. Kyle shoved Lyra into one, then Dr. Thorpe. He climbed in after them, slamming the hatch closed. "Launch," he commanded the pod's AI. Explosive bolts fired. The pod ejected from Station 5, thrusters burning hard, putting distance between them and the dying station. Through the viewport, Lyra watched the spire tear itself apart. The elegant station she designed crumbling as the asteroid's destruction sent shockwaves through the structure. The other stations were drifting away safely, but Station 5 was too close. It folded in on itself like paper, becoming a twisted mass of metal and regret. 10 years. 10 years of her life destroyed in minutes. She'd leveled all 5 stations to save him, to stop the device, to protect billions from the desperate choices of desperate men. And she'd do it again. Kale held her as the pod drifted through the debris field. Dr. Thorpe worked the medical scanner, her face grave. "Radiation exposure severe," Thorpe said quietly. "Cellular damage extensive, survivable, but..." She trailed off. 20 years, Lyra finished for her. "Maybe less, I know." Kale's arms tightened around her. She felt dampness on her neck. He was crying. "I would have died for you," he said. "Why didn't you let me?" "Because the galaxy needs you," Lyra replied. She touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "And I needed to be the one who fixed my mistake. I built the key. I had to destroy it." "It wasn't your mistake. Cross used you. Doesn't matter. I built it. My responsibility." Rescue ships were coming. She could see them on the pod scanner. U.S. Space Command vessels and Aquarian diplomatic cruisers, responding to the distress beacons. Her comm crackled. Cross's voice. "Architect Ashford, this is Commander Cross. The medical telemetry confirms it. The radiation plague is cured. All 40,000 patients, including my daughter. You saved them." Lyra closed her eyes. "And Varric's people?" "Received the terraform data. Confirmed. They're already planning their new colony. You gave them hope." "Then we're done," Lyra said. "Not quite. You destroyed 5 stations. Billions in damages. Hundreds dead. I should arrest you." Lyra laughed. It hurt. Everything hurt. "Try it." A pause, then, "I won't. What you did, it wasn't legal, but it was right. You stopped me from becoming a monster. For that, I'm grateful. Stand by for rescue." The connection cut. 6 months later, Lyra stood on the surface of a small moon in the outer rim. Her auburn hair had grown back, though streaked with white now. Her skin bore radiation scars that no amount of medical treatment could fully erase. She moved slower than before, her body remembering the damage. But she was alive. Kyle stood beside her, his hand in hers. Together they looked at the construction site, a small station, maybe a tenth the size of the old complex, medical research focused, dedicated to finding treatments for the long-term effects of radiation exposure. They'd named it Genesis Memorial. Dr. Thorpe was the director. She'd insisted, called it penance and purpose mixed together. What do you think? Kale asked, watching the construction drones weld the first support struts into place. It's beautiful, Lyra said, and meant it. Smaller, simpler, but honest. No hidden vaults, no precursor weapons, just a place to heal. Just us, Kale said, just us. She thought about the stations she'd destroyed, the lives lost, the years she'd sacrificed, the cost of stopping desperate men from playing God. She thought about the billions saved, the plague cured, the weapon destroyed. Worth it. She picked up the blueprint tablet, stylus already in hand. Let's build something that lasts. And in the void between stars on a forgotten moon, the architect began again.